Welcome to Hood Politics. In this episode, I will be discussing the story of Jamiel Shaw. The facts of the case are as follows. Jamiel Shaw was a 17-year-old student and star athlete at Los Angeles High School. Jamiel excelled in basketball, baseball, and track, but his passion was football. He was being looked at by several colleges, including Rutgers University and Stanford University. On Sunday, March 2nd, 2008, Jamiel was on his way home from a nearby shopping area known as the Beverly Center when he received a call from his father, Jamiel Shaw Sr. Jamiel Sr. told him that it was getting late and to hurry home. Jamiel responded that he would be home soon. Jamiel exited the bus and began walking down the street towards his home. Jamiel lived in Rolling 20s blood gang territory. Shortly after hanging up with his father, Jamiel began talking to his friend, Cristal. Around 8:40 p.m., two men exited a nearby white car and approached Jamiel. One of the men asked Jamiel, "Where you from?" Before Jamiel could reply, the man pulled out a gun and opened fire, hitting Jamiel in the stomach. Jamiel fell to the ground and the gunman fired another bullet, this time striking Jamiel in the head. The two men returned to the white car and fled north on 5th Avenue. Jamiel Sr. heard the gunshots and ran outside. Once he rounded the corner, he saw Jamiel lying on the sidewalk. Jamiel Sr. stayed by his son's side until the ambulance arrived. Jamiel was transported to a nearby hospital. At 9:55 p.m., Jamiel Shaw was pronounced dead. Detectives arrived at the scene and began their investigation. They found that Jamiel had no criminal record and wasn't a documented gang member. Witnesses told investigators that the suspects were two Latino men. Detectives knew that the area Jamiel was killed in was claimed by the Rolling 20s and knew that they were at war with a nearby Latino gang called 18th Street. But after finding that Jamiel wasn't a documented gang member, they believed that it could have been a case of mistaken identity because Jamiel had on a red Spider-Man backpack in the area considered blood territory. Also, the shooter asked Jamiel about his gang affiliation before opening fire, which investigators believe was even more proof of mistaken identity being the cause. Some in the community feared that it could have been racially motivated. In the 1990s and 2000s, race-related attacks between blacks and Latinos were at an all-time high. A conflict that began in California prisons had made its way to the streets, turning gang wars into race wars, with the numerous civilians being killed in the process just because they were black or Latino. The community was in shock over Jamiel's murder. Students and staff from Los Angeles High flooded the sidewalk where Jamiel was shot with flowers, cards, and candles. In the days following Jamiel's murder, investigators began receiving numerous tips, the most credible being that 18th Street was responsible for Jamiel's murder and a member nicknamed Darky was the triggerman. Detectives were familiar with an 18th Street member named Pedro Espinoza who went by the nickname Darky. Espinoza had been arrested a few months prior to Jamiel's murder for exhibiting a firearm and resisting arrest, and he had just been released on March 1st, the day before Jamiel's murder. Espinoza was arrested on March 7th, and he was formally charged with Jamiel's murder on March 11th, the same day Jamiel's funeral service was held. Espinoza would later plead not guilty, and the district attorney announced that they would pursue the death penalty. Jamiel's funeral was attended by hundreds of people, including politicians and community leaders. Hardy Williams, who was Jamiel's football coach at Los Angeles High, said that he never had a better player. He went on to say that Jamiel was the spirit and soul of the football team. Singer James Ingram performed a song in Jamiel's memory. Antonio Verragosa, who was the mayor of Los Angeles at the time, spoke at the service. He told everyone attending the service to honor Jamiel by helping stop the rising tide of gang violence. He went on to say that, "I think Jamiel would tell us that we have more to offer than words of remembrance. I think he would tell us to remember with our actions. He would tell us that the madness of gang and gun violence metastasizing in our streets absolutely has to stop." Jamiel's teammates carried his casket while wearing their white and blue Los Angeles High School football jerseys. Pedro Espinoza was an undocumented immigrant, which created another layer to the case, a layer that would be used by anti-immigration proponents in government as well as media. They believed if Espinoza had been deported after being arrested, Jamiel would still be alive.
Impact segment tonight, 17-year-old high school football star Jamiel Shaw was shot to death March 2nd in Los Angeles. 19-year-old Pedro Espinoza, an illegal alien from Mexico, has been charged with the murder. One day before the shooting, he had been released from the LA County Jail after serving 4 months for a handgun violation. Now, this is insane. Espinoza should have been handed over to Homeland Security, but he was not, because Mayor Anthony Villaraigosa has declared Los Angeles a sanctuary city. So even though Espinoza was illegal, an active gang member, and had violent priors, he was set free on the streets of Los Angeles.
In early April of 2012, 4 years after Jamiel Shaw's murder, jury selection began. The 160 prospective jurors received questionnaires, which included questions about the death penalty. Judge Ronald Rose directed the chosen jurors, 6 men and 6 women, instructing them to avoid reading or watching any media coverage relating to the death penalty, stating, "We need you to be a proper jury." The defense stated that Espinoza's family declined to attend the trial, some out of fear and others because they were out of town. Jamiel Sr. sat in the front row with Althea Shaw, Jamel's aunt, and some friends of the family. They were separated from Espinoza by a large glass window and an iron metal cage. Jamiel Sr. stated that more family and friends will be present in the coming weeks, including Jamel's mother, Anita Shaw, who was serving in the military in Iraq when Jamiel was killed. Opening statements in Espinoza's trial began on April 30th, 2012. The defense attorney in the trial was named Saba Plaffey. Plaffey stated that all the evidence against Espinoza was circumstantial, such as his 18th Street and BK tattoos, BK meaning blood killer. He went on to say that if they had a gun and it was found in my client's back pocket, trouble. But they don't have a gun. They don't have a gun that's linked to him. Plaffey detailed Espinoza's troubled upbringing as a reason for his legal troubles. Plaffey told the court that Espinoza had a rough life. He was brought to the United States at a young age and became involved with gangs at the age of 10. Plaffey went on to say that Espinoza spent most of his life in juvenile camps. The defense also retained a psychiatrist on behalf of Espinoza. The psychiatrist told the court that Espinoza has suffered from bipolar disorder, attention deficit disorder, and hyperactivity disorders since childhood. Espinoza's cousin Pablo testified during the trial. Pablo initially told investigators that Pedro admitted to him that he killed Jamiel. However, Pablo recanted his statements at trial. He told the court that investigators were threatening to arrest and deport his mother, so he told them what they wanted to hear in order to protect her. Another one of Espinoza's cousins named Javier also testified during the trial. Javier also initially told investigators that Pedro admitted to him that he killed Jamiel. However, Javier also recanted his statement at trial. He told the court that investigators kept pushing him when he maintained he didn't know anything about his cousin Pedro being involved in Jamiel's murder. He said he only confessed because investigators threatened to book him for murder and said he would spend 20 years in prison. Javier said that his account was all made up and that the details he provided came from what he heard at school from other students who believed Jamiel was a gang member. A Los Angeles detective named John Shafia later denied threatening either of the men with incarceration or the deportation of Pablo's mother. A Los Angeles detective named Mark Holguin testified that he received information suggesting that Shaw belonged to a gang, but he went on to say that it was never proven or substantiated. Holguin also acknowledged that Jamiel's girlfriend told another officer that Jamiel was a gang member. A Los Angeles police officer named Winston Lee testified that Shaw was wearing a red belt containing the number 20 on the night he was killed, which was consistent with gang affiliation. Lee also testified that he believed Espinoza was a very active member of the 18th Street gang, and he was willing to go into the territory of rivals. Many believed that Jamiel was living a double life, one of a college-bound star student athlete that stayed away from trouble, and one of a Rolling 20s blood gang member. Many cited Jamiel's MySpace page as proof of him being gang affiliated. Jamiel's username was "I'm a true G and you don't need to know the alphabets to be." The word C was replaced with the letter B, which is a common trait used by blood gang members to avoid using the word C, which is seen as a reference to Crip. His bio stated SABG, what do you tell a bitch with 2 black eyes? Nothing and smug, you already told her twice. 30K, EK, AIM, Track Boys. When broken down, the bio was filled with gang references. SABG stands for Second Ave Blood Gang, which is a clique of the Rolling 20s. The word bitch and twice have the letter K after the letter C, which represents Crip Killer. 30K means 30 Killer, which is a diss to the Rolling 30s Crips, who are longtime enemies of the Rolling 20s Bloods. EK means 18 Killer, which is a diss to 18th Street. Jamiel's MySpace page was also filled with pictures of him and other people throwing up gang signs, including signs used by the Rolling 20s Bloods, such as the thumb and the pinky sign, with the thumb facing downwards as a diss to the Rolling 30s Crips. The Shaw family said that none of the things on Jamiel's MySpace page were gang related. They also said the signs he was throwing up were Star Trek signs and not gang signs.
What I saw, my son, he had a peace sign once, and then he had a Star Trek. Well, you know, Mork and Mindy, the Star Trek, you know, and that's what that was. That was spot.
I believe I taught him that one because when he was little, before he went to bed, he watched Star Trek, the original Star Trek. I would read him a story, we'll watch Star Trek, and then he'll go to bed.
The judge barred all of Jamel's MySpace posts from trial. Plaffey felt that Espinoza would have been able to present a stronger case if they were allowed. The prosecution told the court that regardless of Espinoza's mental state, he was still able to make calculated decisions, using Espinoza firing a second bullet into Jamel's head as an example. The prosecutor called LAPD officers and gang experts familiar with the rivalry between the Bloods and 18th Street to the stand. They explained how an 18th Street member killing a rival Blood gang member would benefit 18th Street's status in the gang world and would allow the member to move up in the ranks of 18th Street. They went on to explain how brazen walk-up murders demonstrate no regard for human life. Family and friends of Jamiel Shaw showed up to court during the trial wearing red, but they explained it wasn't to symbolize a gang, it was to symbolize the blood spilled. Jamel's friend Cristal testified at trial, detailing the confrontation that she heard while on the phone with Jamiel. She recalled hearing someone asking where he was from and gunshots following almost immediately. A witness named Juan also took the stand. Juan was a neighbor of the Shaw family, and he had also known Espinoza since high school and knew that he was a gang member. Juan said his father told him that a man named Pedro had stopped by to see him on the night Jamiel was murdered. Later that night, on behest of investigators, Juan went looking for Espinoza and ran into him at a hot dog stand. Espinoza asked Juan if anything was going on in his neighborhood. Juan told Espinoza that someone died. Juan testified that at one point in the conversation, Espinoza uttered BK, which he understood to mean blood killer. He went on to say that at one point Espinoza laughed and said, "BK all day, I'm going to wipe the bloods out." Under cross-examination, Juan said that Jamiel hung out with the Rolling 20s gang members, but had repeatedly denied to him that he was a member of the gang. Jamiel Shaw Sr. also testified at the trial. He told the court how he devoted his life to preparing his son for a brilliant athletic career. He went on to say, "We really thought we had a chance. My son was groomed to succeed." Shaw Sr. also directed words at Espinoza, stating, "You have no right to execute someone and then come in and plead not to be executed." Anita Shaw also testified at the trial. She told the court that she was in Iraq on her second tour of duty when she was summoned by her commander and told that her son had been murdered. She went on to say, "I lost it." She then invoked scripture, saying that she knew she was supposed to forgive, but said, "I'm not that strong of a person." On Wednesday, May 9th, 2012, Pedro Espinoza was found guilty with the first-degree murder of Jamiel Shaw Jr., as well as gang enhancement charges. Plaffey urged the court for a life sentence, but the prosecutor was seeking the death penalty. Espinoza requested a new trial, citing that his attorney was incompetent, but the motion was denied. 2 weeks after the guilty verdict, the jury agreed with the prosecution and recommended the death penalty. On Friday, November 2nd, 2012, Pedro Espinoza was sentenced to death for the murder of Jamiel Shaw Jr. At the time of this video, Pedro Espinoza sits on death row in San Quentin State Prison. In 2009, the Shaw family filed a lawsuit against the County of Los Angeles and Sheriff Lee Baca. The suit stated that the Sheriff's Department was negligent for releasing Espinoza from jail, and instead, Espinoza should have been handed over to an immigration enforcement agency. The suit also alleged wrongful death, stating that if Espinoza was deported, as he should have been, he wouldn't have been able to murder Jamiel shortly after his release from jail. The lawsuit also alleged civil rights violations and violations of the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act, which outlines the agreement between federal and local authorities for immigration enforcement. In 2010, Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Charles F. Palmer determined that the County of Los Angeles and Sheriff Lee Baca were legally immune to the action and dismissed the lawsuit. The Shaw family also began pushing Jamiel's law. The initiative would have given police officers the right to arrest undocumented gang members before they committed crimes. The initiative was also against Special Order 40. Special Order 40 is a police mandate that was put into place in 1979 by the Los Angeles Police Department, its Police Chief Daryl Gates, and the Los Angeles City Council. The mandate prevents LAPD officers from questioning people with the sole purpose of determining their immigration status. The mandate was passed in an effort to encourage undocumented aliens to report crimes without intimidation. Ultimately, Jamiel's law fell short of the required number of signatures to be placed on the ballot, reportedly only receiving 18,559 of the required 73,963 signatures. In 2016, Jamiel Shaw Sr. became an outspoken supporter of Donald Trump and his anti-illegal immigration policies. Jamiel Sr. could often be spotted seated on stage, where he or even Donald Trump himself would tell Jamiel's story and use it as a cautionary tale in the battle against illegal immigration. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe.